Most players think their stroke problem happens during the stroke, but the real mistake usually happens before the cue even moves. And here's the crazy part. If you ask most pool players what causes a bad stroke, they will immediately talk about elbow movement, steering, follow-through, or maybe timing. But almost nobody talks about tension. And that's actually crazy, because two players can look almost identical on video. Same stance, same backswing, same follow-through, but one hit sounds clean, and the other one sounds like he just stabbed the cue ball in self-defense. So let me show you something. Set up the shot you hate the most. Now before you shoot, slightly tighten your jaw, not aggressively, just enough to create a little tension. Then raise your shooting shoulder a tiny bit. Now hold your breath for a second and shoot. Did you feel how weird that suddenly became? The cue starts feeling heavier, your arm feels less free, and the heat feels sticky. And here's the scary part, because most players don't even realize they are doing this, especially under pressure. But now, reset the exact same shot and try this. Let your jaw relax, exhale slowly, let your shoulder drop naturally, and loosen your grip by maybe 20%. That's it. And now, shoot again. And yes, this is where people usually look at me I'm lying, because suddenly the cue flows easier, the hit sounds cleaner, and the stroke feels more automatic. Most players think stroke quality is created by movement, but in most cases stroke quality is created by the condition of the body before movement. And that's why some players practice stroke mechanics for years, but still tighten up in matches. And honestly, this is one of the biggest differences between relaxed practice strokes and real match strokes. The pros are not just mechanically better, they are better at staying physically neutral before the cue moves. That's a massive difference. And by the way, next time you miss a shot badly, instead of asking "Did I steer?" ask yourself,
"Was I tense before I even started?"
That question alone can completely change how you diagnose your game. But now let's leave tension for a second, because here's something that completely changes the way I look at stroke mechanics. Most players think they don't accelerate enough. That's usually not true. They accelerate too late. And those are two very different things, because a lot of amateur strokes actually look smooth at first, and then right before contact, panic. And here's the crazy part, because most players don't even feel this happening. So let me show you what I mean. Take a simple shot. Medium speed, nothing difficult. Now start the forward strokes super slowly and then add speed right before impact, like you are trying to save the shot at the last second. You'll immediately notice something weird. The cue suddenly feels unstable near the cue ball, and this is where a lot of players accidentally create steering, not because they are bad strokers, but because the cue is still trying to organize itself during impact. When you watch top pros in slow motion, their acceleration usually starts earlier. The cue isn't searching for speed at the last second, it already has direction and momentum. That's why pro strokes often look effortless, and honestly, this is one of the biggest visual differences between amateurs and pros. Amateurs often look like they're adding the hit late, but pros look like they're simply allowing the hit to happen, and that's a huge distinction. Take a same shot like before, but this time focus only on one thing. Feel the cue gradually build speed earlier in the forward swing, not at the cue ball, but before the cue ball. That's important. And the moment players feel this correctly, something interesting happens, because the stroke suddenly feels quieter, smoother, less forced and more repeatable, even if the speed stays exactly the same. That's what people misunderstand about smooth strokes. Smooth doesn't mean slow. Smooth means the acceleration happened early enough that the body never panicked. Think about your own game for a second. When you miss, under pressure, do you actually decelerate, or do you secretly wait too long to accelerate? That's the question, right? Alright, but this one right here might be the weirdest experiment in the entire video, because most players believe this without even questioning it. If I focus harder, I will hit the ball better. Sounds logical, right? And sometimes it is true, but in pool there is a point where too much visual control actually starts damaging the stroke. I want you to shoot a few straight-in shots, but this time stare at the cue ball with intense focus, like you are trying to manually control the exact millisecond of contact. And did you notice what often happens? The stroke starts feeling less natural, almost robotic. And this is where things get interesting, because in a second I will show you why elite players often look visually calmer right before impact. But first, let's try the opposite. Same shot, but this time soften your eyes slightly. Instead of trying to control the hit, allow the hit. That's the difference. And for a lot of players, the stroke immediately smooths out. Technically, your eyes can create tension in the body, especially under pressure. And ironically, trying too hard to hit accurately can make you less accurate. That's the paradox. And if you watch elite players carefully, right before delivery, they often look calm, quiet and visually settled. That's because the movement is already trained. This idea actually connects to something called quiet eye theory in sports science. Elite performers often stabilize their visual attention before execution, and honestly, you can see this in pool, especially in pressure moments. Beginners often look visually busy, eyes darting, constant adjustments. Meanwhile, pros often look almost still, because stable eyes often create stable movement. And by the way, this is why some players stroke great alone in practice, but suddenly steer everything in competition. It is not always mechanics. Sometimes pressure changes how aggressively they visually control the shot, and the body reacts immediately. The next time you practice straight shots, don't try to attack the cue ball with your eyes. Try letting your visual focus feel quieter and softer during the final delivery. You might be shocked how much freer the cue suddenly feels. And what's really crazy, this leads directly into the next hidden problem, because sometimes players don't ruin the stroke with tension or vision, they ruin it with fear. And the scary part? Most people don't even realize it is happening. They just know the stroke suddenly feels bad under pressure, especially on long draw shots, pressure shots, touchy position shots, or anything where speed matters. The player becomes afraid of overhitting the shot, not missing, but overhitting. So the brain starts protecting itself, and the body responds instantly. The cue gets guided instead of released. And here is the thing, most players think this is a technique flaw, but a lot of the time it is self-protection. Watch what happens on a typical amateur draw shot. The player gets down, takes a few practice strokes, and you can almost see the caution building. Tiny backswing, careful delivery, super controlled movement, because subconsciously the brain is saying, "Be careful."
Don't smash it. Don't smash it. Don't smash it.
And what do you do next? That single thought destroys the stroke, because now the player is trying to control the hit instead of delivering through it. Great draw shots often look more confident, not necessarily more powerful. That's an important distinction. And mentally, those are completely different actions. One is "please don't overhit this", the other one is "I'm committing to the shot". That commitment changes the entire body, and honestly, this explains why some players look amazing in practice, but then completely collapse in matches. Pressure increases fear, fear increases control, control kills freedom. And freedom is a huge part of great cue delivery. So have you ever noticed your draw stroke getting shorter under pressure? That's not random. That's the body trying to protect itself. Set up a basic draw shot, just enough to pull the cue ball back cleanly. Hit one shot while thinking. Don't hit too hard. Then hit another while focusing only on accelerating through the cue ball smoothly. The difference is usually immediate, because the second stroke often feels cleaner, more confident and less forced, even when the cue speed is almost identical. And here's the thing, the issue wasn't power, it was hesitation, and hesitation is poison for cue delivery. A lot of players don't have a bad stroke, they have a stroke that stops halfway because fear takes over. And once you get this, you stop trying to guide every shot into existence and start learning how to trust motion again. But now, here is where this gets even crazier, because sometimes your body physically gives the cue nowhere to go. Most players think this way. If my cue goes offline, my arm must be doing something wrong. And partially it is true, but very often the arm is just reacting to a bad environment. And that environment is your body position, and this is one of the biggest hidden reasons players struggle with steering. Let me show you something. Take a normal stance and exaggerate a few things. Move your head too close to the cue, crowd your chest over the line, and rotate your shoulder inward slightly. Immediately, the cue feels trapped, there is no freedom anymore. And this is where players get confused, because they think my stroke suddenly feels crooked. But the stroke didn't randomly become crooked. The body removed the cue's path. The cue wants to travel straight, but the body says,
We don't have room for that.
And honestly, this is why some players can practice stroke drills forever and still feel inconsistent. Most of the time, the arm isn't choosing to move sideways, it is escaping sideways, and that's a huge difference. And one thing elite players do incredibly well is they create space for the cue before the stroke starts. Their setup allows the cue to move freely, everything supports the cue path. And that's exactly why their strokes often look so effortless. So the next time your stroke feels weird, don't immediately change your grip. Don't instantly blame your elbow. First of all, ask yourself, does my cue actually have room to move? That question alone can solve problems players struggle with for years. Now, set up a straight shot and first crowd yourself, get too close, try to trap the cue and take a few strokes. You will often feel tension rerouting, instability, and steering pressure. But now, reset and create more space. Slightly freer shoulder, cleaner head position, and relaxed chest angle. Suddenly, the cue starts moving naturally again. The cue doesn't go where your arm wants it to go. It goes where your body allows it to go. And that's the real insight. Once players understand this, stroke mechanics stop feeling mysterious, and you realize that the cue was never the enemy. And when you put all these things together, something amazing happens, because the stroke finally stops feeling forced and starts feeling automatic. So let me ask you, did you even expect what I presented today? And which one actually shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments. And if you wanna train this stuff properly, check out the link below to Pool Billiards CO. There are advanced training patterns, stroke drills, and premium practice tools, and you can grab your discounts using link in the video description. If this video changed the way you think about pool stroke, hit the like, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Take care!